and big and strong. I know he's over well above 300, like the 310s, 315s, 320s, but doesn't look like it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's some guys that could be 320 pounds and look like, bowl of Jello. This guy is it's 320 pounds and it looks like it's carved out of marble.
All right, welcome in. That was Jim Harbaugh on this afternoon live on the In the Trenches podcast, talking about one of his 23 signees for this cycle of the Michigan football recruiting class that went down yesterday in the early signing period. I'm Dennis Fithian, joined by former Wolverine Jim Scarcelli. You see him there if you're watching on YouTube on the videos. Scar, how are you?
I'm doing great, Danny. It's yesterday was a beautiful day. We brought in some studs, some stallions from all over, and momentum is a beautiful thing, man. You win a championship, it matters. Championships matter. Rings matter.
Yeah, the Big Ten championship, it did seem to matter. Those guys, a lot of those players, the different ones, maybe every one of them mentioned that Michigan-Ohio State game this year, and definitely a couple of the ones that flipped at the last second mentioned it. I also think, with the staff staying around, there was some chance that some of the coaches were going to go elsewhere. But as this coaching carousel went, not just the head coach, but the assistant coaches, the defensive coordinator, the one kid, Keon Sabb, who was committed to Clemson. Well, Brent, he had a final five of Clemson, and Brent Venables went to take over as head coach of Oklahoma. Ohio State was in his top five. They lost their defensive coordinator. LSU lost their defensive coordinator, and Georgia's defensive coordinator went to Oregon to take the head coaching job. So Michigan was the one. It seemed like just in that recruitment right there, by not losing their defensive coordinator in those other four. I mean, who could have predicted that Michigan would have kept their coordinator, and the rest of those four teams that I just named would lose theirs, and that's how they would end up with a really outstanding looking prospect in this Keon Sabb at safety.
Yeah, relationships and really matter in recruiting, and these kids built this, get to know these coaches over so long a period of time, and then if they leave, but a lot of guys are waiting. Some schools will wait till after signing day, which is a whole ethical question there that, many times you see that happening. But yeah, and Michigan was right there able to capitalize on some of these coaching changes. We obviously had touched base with some of these kids earlier on in their process, and they still thought highly of Michigan, but they made their decision early and were going to Oklahoma or wherever. And we were able to capitalize on it. And that's why I know having gotten recruited, even when you tell a guy no, they always want to leave it on a good note. Leave it on a good note, because you never know what might happen to come back to you, even as a transfer or whatever. So I think it's important for that. But yeah, we definitely capitalized on it. It was probably a combination of everything. Relationships that were made prior to them committing somewhere else, the championship, a lot of these things, could have affected those decisions.
Well, how about to your point now that they have the transfer portal? And while I said there were 22 in this class, they actually had 23 that are going to be counted here because they got the big offensive lineman last week, Andrew Gentry, who initially a couple years ago had committed to Virginia, but they lost their head coach this year. He ended up going on a mission. So he comes back, and, Michigan was, like you talked about, that relationship. They were able to circle back and end up bringing him in. And who knows, with the transfer portal, you might have I would bet that there's, 20, 30 guys, maybe not that many, but at least 10 that had Michigan right down to the last week or two and ended up going elsewhere. They might not have had the experience that they have wanted there. And now that you can, in a snap, end up going somewhere if you see the fit, like, Scar, if you're a outside linebacker rush end, and that Michigan's going to lose Aiden Hutchinson, they're going to lose David Ajabo, probably with Ajabo for sure. Hutchinson, he looks like he's going to be the number one pick. And you start looking, you think, what, maybe I could go over there just like that, and I could be the next, David Ajabo for Michigan next year. So, the guys will be looking at that too.
Denny, though, these are the decisions the coaching staff has to make. Okay. Back in my day, my brother went to Illinois. They built their program on junior college transfers. Mike White, after they fired Gary Moeller. This is way back in the day, but they were bringing in a lot of junior college guys. That can affect your recruiting negatively because you don't want to pay your dues. We talked about this before. You pay your dues. You're second team guy, and now the guy graduates. You're ready to go, and bam, they bring in a junior college guy. So it was a factor for me when I was getting recruited by Illinois. My concern with these transfers, and was we brought in Jake Ruddock, and then we brought in Patterson. I was concerned that was going to hurt, or maybe it did hurt our ability to recruit the best quarterbacks out of the high school level. So I think every coaching staff has to make a decision. How deep are they going to go into these transfers? And because if you go too deep, it can affect your ability to recruit high school kids. I know, just put yourself again in a high school kid's situation. Now, I've been watching Michigan State because I know he's taken some kids and this past year, and he's looking to take some more this year. And it appears like it hasn't really affected the recruiting that much. But I don't think Michigan is going to if they do it, it's going to be piecemeal because you got to really be smart with it because you don't want some kid saying, you are Mr. Transfer School and I'm not dealing with you.
Well, with the one thing you just look at where Michigan's advantages right now are. You started out talking about winning the Big Ten and beating Ohio State for sure. I mean, that has helped and, where they're at right now. Michigan's always been able to sell a lot of great things, but being able to sell that, you're heading to the college football playoff, that you just won the Big Ten, they hadn't been able to sell that ever. So now they have that. So they have all those things, the coaching continuity, they have that. And then everything else, the school, the academics, I mean, across the board, if there's one spot that they might be where you'd say lacking, where they can't go out there, where they could be at a disadvantage. And I don't know if it's a big disadvantage, but it doesn't appear to be a disadvantage, is that when you transfer credits in, it doesn't seem that Michigan is able to do it with the ease of some of the other schools. Now, I'm not making it sound like, it's Duke or Northwestern here in terms of the, admissions, but when it comes to transferring in and taking kids to the transfer portal, maybe it is a little bit of a disadvantage, and it seems like that. And, your point here, I think that, you just look, they needed, because they were switching up the scheme. They took the kid out of Oregon State, Jordan Whitley, a defensive tackle. I mean, he was somebody that was in the transfer portal. They took Alan Bowman, a quarterback. You never could have enough there to bolster the quarterback. They took Dalen Baldwin, a wide receiver. He contributed this year as well. So there's a couple that they got in on, but yeah, not like, double digits like what you're talking about with Michigan State.
Yeah, I think, I think Michigan has taken the philosophy, unless they screw up in recruiting and had some guys leave that they didn't expect. I think they're going to really try to minimize it. But yeah, it can be a thing. It can help you if you make a mistake in recruiting. I think that's the big thing there. Most of the time, Danny, I do see some really good players. Like I see the Auburn quarterback. That's a good player. He can plug right in somewhere and give him he's a really good player. There are some really good, Power 5 guys that are leaving, but I would guess if I just had to throw a number of it, 75% of them, I don't know how much they're going to really help Michigan. But because a lot of times they're leaving, maybe they're frustrated, whatever, or maybe they just weren't good enough. But it's out there. We got to be smart with it. We just got to pick and choose and not overdo it. And but from when I look at what we have coming back, I see pretty good depth just about at every position on our football team. I think we've recruited pretty darn well the last 2-3 years. Where I don't just us looking at it, seeing these backups get into games. I see some pretty good depth throughout our program.
Yeah, how about? What did you think here of the recruiting class when you look down and, the things without being like a recruiting aficionado, but you spent so much time at camps and you spent so much time in the high school game, you kind of understand the top tier guys that would be, that would be looking at a place like Michigan. But still, for me, I look at the defensive backs and the wide receivers. They really came away with some big time players there, and guys that, when you're talking about a guy they flipped from Notre Dame, there was another one. You talk about the continuity with Brian Kelly leaving, the Samorian Walker, and you had the relationship with Ron Bellamy, who is from Louisiana and went down there, and that wasn't lost on Walker. But you know what? He's a big kid, and they said he runs a sub 4.4. I mean, you're running a sub 4.4. That's something else.
Yeah, I'm starting maybe to see a change a little bit from a receiver standpoint. The Michigan philosophy.
Keep it going. My producer wants it. Keep talking. I'll just exit the screen for 10 seconds, and I'll be right back talking.
The Michigan philosophy for receivers in the past, at least under the Lloyd Carr era, was always to take the big receivers, the guys that are your Edwards, Braylon Edwards, and the Ty Streets, the tall receivers. That's where Michigan was in the past. In the last few years, it seemed like it was speed and space, Roman Wilson's. This year, it looks like we're ideally, though, Denny, the last guy you want to defend are the Calvin Johnsons, the Randy Mosses, the tall guys that are fast. Those are the last guys you want to defend, and those are the guys you want on your football team. It looks like this past class, though, Michigan took some taller receivers. Maybe they're getting back to that. I like the tall guys. I mean, there's always more room for error. You throw it up there, they can make plays. But I think a little change there. But, yeah, we definitely brought some great receivers in. And, Denny, the big thing I like seeing, and I talked about this, I want to beat Notre Dame, Alabama, LSU. I want to beat those guys, Ohio State, like we did in many cases. Take a kid from Oklahoma. That's when we're really rolling. And that's what we did this past year. But I'm seeing you've talked about the DB. Yeah, we brought in a lot of DBs, athletic, tough. When they see Dax Hills, when they show them all that film, they're going to show them. And they see Dax Hill coming on to some of the blitzes and how he's now going to be a high draft pick. And, all those things help recruiting. Pro football is big in recruiting and in the scheme that you're doing. And, but I saw bigger receivers, and to talk about the two positions you said, yeah, we brought in. I can't mention all of them, but I listened to Jim this morning. They all got similar qualities: fast, athletic, tough kids. The receivers are all get guys that can get separation, make plays, athletic guys. So yeah, those are definitely. We did a great job with skill positions there.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised that the three wide receivers they got. I mentioned Walker and the speed that he possesses. This Clemens kid, Darius Clemens, that they flipped. He liked Auburn. He looked like Oregon was in there, but he goes to Michigan from the tail of the tape. What you're talking about, he's got the size, but physically, he's built like a defensive end. At wide receiver, they're the comparisons of DK Metcalf, or you mentioned Calvin Johnson. Calvin Johnson, I'm not saying these two players that he's going to be a talent like that. I'm talking about his physique. He looks like he's 26 years old. He looks like a grown man already. He's coming in, and he's built like a defensive end. So that part right there, when you think about being able to get on the field or whatever else, that is nice. And
Danny, I thinking back to my era, the Michigan philosophy, the Schembechler philosophy, they used to just bring in as many big, strong, fast, athletic, tough football players as they could. In many cases, guys that played tight end, defensive end, linebacker, fullback, just bring in great players. And most of the time in many cases, they would try them out on defense, see if they could play defense, and then move them if they couldn't, move them to the offensive line, move them to tight end. I mean, look at Hassan Hackett. That's a guy that was initially as a linebacker. So many of these guys, and I see less and less of that in college football, position changes, going from this to that, going to the other side of the ball. It seems it seems like lately it's more and more, where they're recruited at is where they stay. But I know, obviously Harbaugh has no problem changing guys, moving guys around to get them on the field. And when you mentioned some of those great big, I saw some of those guys they have on defense, or some of them defense could probably be linebackers if they keep growing. And that's sometimes how they envision it. I've dealt with college coaches for, darn near 35, 40 years now. And one label I would put on them is they are genetic predictors. They look at a kid, and it's amazing. I remember talking to some of these guys about what they look at, and the hips, and how tall is the mom, how tall is the dad, and how they run, the way they run. My coach didn't like guys that were pigeon-toed. He just there's just certain characteristics of an athlete that a lot of these coaches will look like how they bend, how they bend at the knee, at the waist. And, they just look at things physically that, we might not think about.
Yeah. You think about some of the tight ends that went on to be tackles, or sometimes vice versa. You mentioned Jim Harbaugh. I listened to him today too. He was talking about Mason Graham, could be a defensive tackle. Looks like he could be defensive end, but he was playing defensive end. He was playing offensive tackle at a school out there in California. And Harbaugh said, he's like, he asked the kid, what do you want to play? And he said, rush end. Now, if he's out there and there's a need at tackle or something on offense or defense, sometimes you see that path to playing. And it's just like the QBs there, the one kid out of California, Jaden Denegal, looks like a pretty good prospect as a QB here, but they took two QBs and they flipped one from Virginia Tech, Alex Orji, the kid from Texas, and he sounds like that he is put together, and he's as good a runner as he is a passer. And there have been, when you're that good of an athlete, you know how that goes. Like sometimes that you want to play quarterback because that's the glamour position, but if he doesn't see a path to playing time at QB, this could be a guy that they're projecting as a linebacker at Michigan. So you don't know. You don't see many of those, a flip from a quarterback to a linebacker. I've seen some flip from quarterbacks to tight end a lot, but not to linebacker, but maybe this kid.
Yeah, he definitely he brought in two good-looking, all-around, athletic, tough, accurate, throw the ball, leader guys at quarterback. And again, I think we're seeing maybe a little change. We're nothing wrong with Brandon Peters, but I don't think we're going to see those kind of guys anymore. I think you mean with
Peters, a pocket passer kind of?
Yeah, I think he wants more athletic guys. JJ McCarthy. I mean, look, Cade McNamara is a decent, he's a good athlete. He's obviously doesn't run as well as McCarthy or some of these other guys, but you got to try to find that balance. But I know as a guy who played and coached defense, the last thing I want to go against is a guy who's a good passer and a good runner. The running part always gives you problems. Just again, looking at the Georgia kid, if it was just his ability to throw, he wouldn't be much of a problem at all, but his ability to run. So maybe we're going to see a more quarterback run. That's the direction he wants to go. Maybe we might see, if he has 2-3 on the roster, maybe we might see some more Baltimore Ravens type stuff, running the quarterback on a lot more predetermined plays. But yeah, we haven't brought two quarterbacks in 1 year in a while. And, but both of them look good. Both of them were highly recruited. And that's a great situation because we don't know what's going to happen with JJ. And McNamara could play another year. And the way he's playing, he's a pro prospect. He's playing very well. He could be gone next year, and we just don't know. So he's got to be prepared. And he took steps to make sure we got some people that can play at that position.
Yeah, who really knows what's going on with McNamara? Last year he was a redshirt freshman. Last year didn't count. So really, he's got a couple years if he wants, considering the pandemic season that he could be around. But he's got McCarthy breathing down his neck. They got the championship to play here for first, the Final Four, and then that's going to sort it out. That immediately becomes – it's already a story, at least something to talk about. The quarterback position, you're always going to talk about it. But, as soon as this season is over, that becomes the number one story at Michigan, just how they're going to sort the quarterbacks out. And there's a lot of other schools out there saying, hey, we'll take whichever guy you don't want. We'll put him here. Michigan may be hoping that they can hang on to both of those guys and let them compete and go into next year with a similar type situation. Hey, Scar, you want to hear from some of the players? I wanted to play some of the audio from a couple of the players. I've got audio from two of the players, and then you can just tell me what you think of what they're saying, okay?
Okay.
All right, this is a Deuce Spurlock. He is a linebacker out of Alabama, and he was asked, why Michigan?
Really, it started with me going up to camp up there in June, starting to work out, and then Coach Hilo just being real with me. During the workout, I took my eyes off my man, and he made me run for it. So I don't know many coaches that's gonna make a recruit run. So that's definitely something that stuck out to me, and then just ended up communicating, just keep on talking to him and getting to build a better bond with them. They're some of the coolest coaches on earth, and some people I can't wait to play for.
There you go, Deuce Spurlock, pointing to camp where George Hilo made him run, at one of the Michigan camps. So, you worked a lot of those camps, Scar, so you know the guys that are prospects. I mean, you're treating everybody the same way, but I'm sure you know which guys are, possible recruits there. But, treating them with kid gloves doesn't sound like what Michigan's doing at their camps. Did you ever do that? Like if it was hey, this guy, man, this is one of the best players in the country. Let's not tick him off.
No, I for the most part, the way I was recruited and the way I saw the Michigan coaches treat the kids at the camp, they were pretty real on how they were going to be. You hate to be a fake guy and just kiss his butt and then get him signed and now he's it's whoa, what is this? But we have not emphasized that, Denny, and I don't know that Coach Harbaugh emphasized it enough. But don't fool yourself. Ron Bellamy, Mike Hart, he said Hewitt is the linebacker coach.
Hilo,
those guys are they made a difference. I know they made a difference. In some of the other, all the new coaches. I mean, they mattered. I believe they went. Listen, I got recruited by a bunch of different guys, and all these kids at Michigan, they got recruited by a bunch of different guys, and obviously it's winning and it's school and all these other things. But you got to have the guy that's presenting it. Who's the coach? How's he putting it all together for you? Do you trust him? Do you trust that guy? And I think we got some guys that can coach and recruit. You got to be able to do both, man. You got to be able to teach, and you got to be able to, connect with kids.
Jim Scarcelli, and you see 81 through 85. Now, Scar, I got a couple quick hitters about you, about when you're being recruited. They didn't have the star system, I don't think, back there in the 80s. I don't remember it really till the 90s. They started grading it out. But, you would have been what? Would you have been a 5-star or would you have been a 4-star? 4-star, you think?
What we had. Well, then I could have gone anywhere. So most guys that were that went to Michigan back in our era, if Michigan offered you, more than likely you could have gone to Notre Dame or Ohio State or just about anywhere. In fact, I got recruited by the University of Miami, Howard Schnellenberger. Back then, it was hard to get film. We didn't. It was you had one tape for the team. You didn't have VHS and now it's so easy for a coach to get film. I took a trip to the University of Miami. One of my teachers he went there. Anyway, he never saw film of me. Howard Schnellenberger never saw film. And he said, well, I know Michigan offered you and you're a tight end, defensive end. I said, what do you want me to play? He said, well, you can play whatever position you want to play. But we had the blue chip list. In the state of Michigan, we had a blue chip list. And I was number 4 on the blue chip list. So I don't know where that would have stacked up.
Who was one or two? Who was 1 or 2 that year on that blue chip list? You were the top 4.
The number 1 guy went to Michigan State, Aaron Rodgers. He was a running back out of Catholic Central, highly recruited kid. And then the 2 and 3 guys both went to Michigan with me. Neither of them really lasted long at all. One
Okay.
transferred to Central Michigan after 1 year. A guy named Greg Washington, real good athlete, and a guy named Bruce Brown was a big tackle. But
So what? Your coach was Bo. Your defensive coordinator would have been
my freshman year was McCartney, then Moeller. My last 4.
McCartney and Moeller's Monsters. You were a part of that, and the position coach as
Mylan Vuletich. Great man, great coach.
There you go. All 3 of those. I like that.
Lloyd Carr was the secondary coach all 5 years for me.
Man.
And Jerry Meter was D-line. Bo had a lot of strengths. You know, we can talk about him. We can do episodes on him. But one of them was bringing in great coaches, too. He had an eye for talent, and he had an eye for coaches. He brought in great coaches. And they were all, good recruiters and good communicators, good, honest men. And you can't fool when you're getting recruited. When you're recruiting people, they can see through the BS, man. You got to just like the kid.
Carr, you get some Hall of Famers there. Carr is McCartney in the Hall of Fame. He won a championship in Colorado. Carr won one. Bo's in the Hall of Fame. I mean, you had a Hall of Fame defensive side of the ball there. Jim Harbaugh talked earlier about you always remember the day you signed, where you were at, what happened, and everything else. I don't know about the fanfare, but do you recall the day that you put pen to paper and signed your letter of intent to Michigan?
Yeah, it was. We always signed on a Wednesday. Signing day was on maybe second Wednesday. I forget, in February.
First Wednesday, I think.
Yeah, I think it was something like that. It was on a Wednesday morning. And back in the day, you would have guys that would, and you couldn't sign. They had to fax it to you, or I can't remember how but the guy was waiting at my house. And back in the day, you would have different coaches trying to nudge out the other guy or try to get one last pitch to the kid, even though he may have committed, but there were guys that didn't know until the very last minute, and you'd have 3-4 coaches out in front of their driveway. But Bo told me, I never forget that phone call. He said he called me on a maybe it was the Thursday, Friday before, and he said, "Listen, you got to let me know by Sunday night." Because he has to, if you're coming, you're coming. If you're not, I'm going to offer that scholarship to someone else. So that was kind of how it worked. He said, "Listen, you got to let me know by Sunday night." And it came down to Michigan State for me, my final 2. And that's a tough thing for these kids. I went through it. It's very tough, when you have to make that decision and, to tell somebody else no, because it was a really tough, close call for me. But, yeah, and then Wednesday morning we signed, and the pressure was off. But yeah, I remember it, man. I remember it like it was yesterday too.
Here's some emotional audio from one of the Michigan recruits from yesterday, running back from South Carolina, CJ Stokes. This audio is courtesy of WISTV. Here's the running back getting emotional on signing day.
There's not a lot to smile about yet. Sure, I made it to a big D1 college, but my goals expand way further than just walking in the door of a college. I'll let out a big smile when I have a degree and a career that I put my all into. Whatever that may be, from the NFL or start my own physical therapy practice, whatever it is, I'm going to put my all into it. I like to close out by thanking Coach Hart, Coach Harbaugh, and all the other coaches that offer me, and I'll embrace the grind.
That's CJ Stokes. And then after that, he broke down for about 30 seconds, but then the reporter talked with him, and here's a little bit more from Stokes on why he signed with Michigan.
The big grind that I've had from that whole time, I really never got to sit down and take it all in. So I got kind of emotional because I know how hard I've worked to be able to make it to this position. There's a lot of people who in the recruitment process who are just gifted with size and gifted with just natural ability, And I have some of that too, but I feel it was my hard work that kind of set me apart and got me to where I am today.
There he is, CJ Stokes. So, yeah, you could hear him in the auditorium, and he was there, and he's wearing his heart on his sleeve. You loved it. Those are the kind of sound bites and the kind of video that, come out of signing day. There's a lot of other things that people go with there, but, I love
Danny, I love what the kid had to say. I mean, I remember my whole goal, just like, my goal when I was in freshman in high school was to play at Michigan, and I got my first offer from Wisconsin. And then finally, when that Michigan offer came in, it was like, yeah, okay, great. But he definitely has his priorities and understanding. The easy part is getting the scholarship offer to Michigan. That's easy. The harder part is getting on the field and playing on a regular basis. We hear about all these guys. We know all the names, of some of the guys that have played this year. But there's a lot of really, really good players that haven't played or played very little. So the easy part is getting there. The hard part is now, because now he's going to walk it. He was a linebacker. You're going to walk in that. I remember my freshman year, I walked in that outside linebacker room, and there were 12 outside linebackers. Every one of them was on scholarship. Every one of them was highly recruited. And it's just a grind, man. I was the bottom guy, and then you just keep grinding, man. Guys drop out, guys flunk out, guys quit, guys graduate. Guys make mental mistakes, guys make physical mistakes or whatever. You just got to keep grinding to try to get yourself in a position to be a starter. And he definitely understands it. He's got his priorities right. He's going to have to. The grind is just a different grind. It's a marathon, and you got to keep grinding, man.
Well, heck, you can point to at the running back position. You already mentioned Hassan Haskins. He would be one to just say, "Hey, stay with it." At running back, you never know. Like he'll look in that running back room. Haskins said yesterday he's going to go to the Senior Bowl, so it looks like he's, heading to the NFL. But you're going to come in there and Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards and Tavier Dunlap is there. He's been biding this time, so yeah, it'll be stacked, but. Waiting it out a little bit, I think Michigan could point at a lot of different positions. Running back would be another one, but there's we already talked about defensive end. Ajabo got on the field last year. You saw him; he was coming in. He wasn't starting, but he played a little bit. But nobody was predicting that guy was going to be you can call him a superstar this year. And there's some other players. DJ Turner wasn't being talked about as a top corner, certainly not a starting corner. And you know what? He didn't start really until Jamon Green ended up getting banged up late in the year. But Turner looks like a star now in the making. Now the way that they've that he's progressed and the cornerbacks this year. And remember, they had went Mo Lindquist was the corner coach during the year. He was the defensive backs coach, I should say, and then he took the job from Buffalo. And then they went to Steve Klinksdale, who didn't even have, the DBs didn't have a chance to work with him in the spring. And that particular position group really, one of the best, they're all there. You can start talking about all of them, but that position group, if they don't take the step forward and play like they did, we're not talking about Michigan as a Big Ten champ.
Yeah, there's they definitely were well coached there. There were good athletes there, though. Dax Hill, this is his third year. He played a lot of football, and Hawkins played a lot of football. There's experienced guys there, Denny.
Yeah,
and I think there's some good-looking guys coming up because we're going to lose those two. We're going to lose Gray. And secondary corner.
I mean, maybe, but not necessarily. I mean, Gray could stay around if he
wants. Okay, he's got another year. I thought he was done.
Nope.
Okay. Well, good, because he's a good player. It'd be nice to have him back, but yeah.
Technically, Hawkins is the only one because he was a super senior because of the pandemic. He's out of time, and Dax Hill will probably go to the NFL. Could be a first-round pick, second-round pick, is around where he's projected. In the 30s, early 30s. Could be a first-rounder, late, second round. So he could go, but the rest of those guys all could come back.
Yeah. And I feel good about our secondary. I think we've got some good linebackers that played a lot in there when Ross was hurt. But there's good depth that played a lot in inside linebacker. Our interior guys are solid. They're all back. Mozzie and Hinton and Jenkins. What concerns me is the outside edge guys, outside backer, with Hutchinson and Najabo. The backups there was Taylor Upshaw. I think he's done, and then the Morris kid. I'm not sure how much more eligibility those guys have, but those positions are really what concerns me when I look at our defense for next year. Are the two outside guys. Ajabo, it's amazing how much the NFL prioritizes the ability to rush the quarterback because he does that real well. I've always said that he needs to get better defending the run, but I don't think the NFL guys really care. If you can rush the quarterback, we'll teach you, because he hasn't played a lot of football. We'll teach you how to play the run better. But I like the people we have back. Edge guys on defense is probably the only concern. I don't know. They got the Brendan McGregor kid. Maybe they have a lot of faith in some of those kids.
Yeah, and maybe Jim Harbaugh has an eye for that particular position and rushing the quarterback. You just think about some of the guys just here recently. Winovich, Uche is kind of the one that you're talking about. I don't know about Uche playing against the run, but hell, he could rush the passer like nobody. And he found his niche there in the pros. I mean, he's doing a pretty good job at the next level. He just gets after the quarterback. Just has him fly to the QB. So they got some guys like that. They have done that. We're going to get to some Orange Bowl thoughts, and also I want to play one other piece of audio here. It comes from a head coach in college football. Name, image, and likeness was being talked about a lot, and I didn't spend a lot of time. And your door usually have a picture of one of your favorite broadcasters. It's not me. It's not me. It's Feinbaum, right? It's Paul Feinbaum. So I was checking out his show just a little bit yesterday, and he had the Texas A&M coach on, Jimbo Fisher. And this is courtesy of Sirius XM, because Paul was saying that people were taking the name, image, and likeness, and Jimbo has had a fantastic recruiting class and how he sorted all of the NIL business out.
There's not a lot to smile.
Okay, and here he is.
Well, I mean, I think it's going to be a fact. Now, you can't promise things. You can't say, I'm going to get you an NIL deal, and that's illegal. I mean, all you can do is present what other players in your university have done in the past. That is all you're allowed to do. But, I mean, it's like there was a lot of NIL deals going on before all this was going on. They just weren't legal. No one told nobody.
They're laughing about NIL deals before this year, but Texas A&M was bringing in guys left and right. But he made it clear that, they weren't presenting the NIL deals. But today, the news, I don't know if you saw this, it just came out within the last couple hours. Tom Brady signed 9 college football players to name, image, and likeness deals, including Deion Sanders' son and including Cade McNamara. It gets a deal with Tom Brady, a name, image, and likeness deal. I don't know, the TB12, I don't know, what exactly it entails, clothing or maybe everything that he's doing there, healthy living, whatever Brady's doing. But nice package for Cade McNamara, nice NIL deal for the QB at Michigan.
Yeah, when I first looked at the ratings and I see Texas A&M at the top, I had it reminded me of SMU back in the day. Where did these guys come from all of a sudden? Remember SMU? Where they were such a, you guys all saw the 30-30.
They got the death penalty.
Guys.
You got the death penalty.
Yeah, but when I'm looking at Texas A&M, I'm wondering, okay, is there some smoke there? Because sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire, right? And I was wondering, maybe they just did a better job at the NIL deal than a lot of people. But let's not fool ourselves. I think Michigan is involved with it. Michigan State made it public. They're giving $500 a month to all their players. I think Michigan is doing something, but it's not out in the public. I think that is out there, and I think I don't know, but I'm thinking maybe some of these guys have deals, and maybe the coaches have told them to keep it quiet because all that does is create dissension in the locker room.
Yeah, I hear you, Scar. You know what? Our recruiting editor, Brandon Justice, was down at Campus Martius where Will Johnson made his announcement, or he made his announcement, then he went to Campus Martius. I don't know exactly the timeline there, but he was just writing his story there, and it wasn't lost on me that he said that both of the Wanglers were there at his announcement down in Detroit. And I see that shirt that you have on there. And I remember Jared about a month ago saying, hey, there's some things that are happening here with Michigan, some good news with name, image, and likeness. And so, they already do something where they have some of the shirts, or I should say the jerseys, and the players get, money from that, a portion of it. So they've already got something in place. Maybe this is something more here. And with Will Johnson, not that they're coming out and saying, hey, here's what our package deal was for Will Johnson. But, it's just like a little bit what Jimbo had to say there. You have to listen really close because he's saying, look, you can't go ahead and promise, the money up front. But, there sounds like there's a lot of ways to, maneuver around some of this stuff when you're talking about name, image, and likeness. So.
Yeah, it's you show them other guys. These are the deals other guys had, and they got to make a decision. But yeah, I just wonder what packages we have for our guys that they're not telling anybody about.
Right.
So I just think there's a lot of that going on, and the media and they're just shutting it down, and probably part of the deal in some of those cases is you better not open your mouth or you don't get paid.
Well, just think about it. We know that there were teams that were going into the gray areas even and beyond. You mentioned SMU most recently. I don't know, maybe it was about 10 years ago, but Ole Miss was down there. They had Hugh Freeze, and they signed the number one class, and that Laquan Treadwell was one. They had,
I remember that,
this defensive tackle that was, and none of the guys were like from down in Mississippi. I mean, they're pulling them in from Chicago and, New York, and none of the assistants really had ties to them. It was like, this really looks too good to be true. Well, they went on probation for that, but what you can do now, so you can go out there and it's a lot easier just to go out there and you pay the players with the NIL. I think it's good. It's drastically different. I used to sit around doing talk shows and people used to talk about, oh, well, what if there was a college football playoff? And man, what if you could pay players? And, it's all these things. And what if you could just train, the coaches could just up and leave like Brian Kelly. Why can't the players do that? And, they'd sit around saying, I don't know, like NCAA doesn't want that to happen. And now all of this, and it happened pretty quick, where you can do all of these things. So it's the landscape, college football right now, man. And just where Michigan's at, I was talking with a friend of mine who was, he was saying, man, Harbaugh did such a great job this year, the assistants and everything else. And I was saying, just think how close, like they could have lost that. I mean, they were down with 7 minutes to go in that Penn State game. I mean, they could have lost that game. And, if they would have lost to Ohio State again this year, we'd be sitting here talking about, oh, Jim just got all of these, he's got everything going. But, man, winning and then just how it lines up everything and where you're going, it's not only is it more fun, it's just the way they closed so hot with the players and they kept the continuity. They were able to pull some of these. It's just it went from, Michigan's always been pretty good. I think they'll always be pretty good. They've got the resources and everything else and the stadium and all of that. But it's just it's exploded, Scar, with everything that's come on right now. And they're just in great position. They really are.
Yeah. Hey, Danny, the difference between winning and losing is such a fine line in terms of, preparing your program. When you're the guy in charge, like Jim is, so many little things matter. Is your coach out coaching their guy? Are your players out playing their guy? Is your training table better? Is your strength coach better? And all them little things matter, man. The first time I had heard that line, Paterno said it. He said, take care of the little things. The big things will take care of themselves. Take care of the little things. Come on time every day. All them little things matter. But Danny, I don't know if you looked at the Eastern Division and how some of this is affecting recruiting, how well Rutgers did in state. They got so many, they had one of their best classes ever. Maryland had a great class. Penn State is like number 6 in the country. Michigan State had one of their best classes, but
true.
What I want to see happen, and this can help Michigan, and it's actually going to help the SEC. When Texas A&M can go in and start beating Alabama for kids, and we start to get a balance of power down there in the South, that can help the rest of the SEC, because now maybe Alabama has to take more Alabama kids that they would normally let go to somewhere else. And same with the Midwest now. We want, Rutgers to hang on to their kids and not let Ohio State go all over the country to get kids. So maybe they got to take some of those kids in Ohio that they've been letting Cincinnati get. You know what I'm saying? We want to, when other teams are doing better and when we beat Ohio State like we did, hopefully that has an impact on their ability, to not go into Missouri and get Ezekiel Elliott and those kind of things. We want them to have to go back and get those kids that they're letting Cincinnati have. You understand the point I'm making there?
Yes, I do. I also think, just listening to you talk about, and you're right, and Michigan State not only doing a good job with recruiting, but they're doing a fabulous job, maybe the best job of the Big Ten, and hitting that transfer portal. And, they had 4 guys that, you don't blend the transfer portals into and include it with your recruiting class and where it ends up getting ranked. Michigan had the Andrew Gentry kid who's not involved in the ranking and where they ended up being number 8. Michigan State had 4 guys. And if you look, there were some, 4 stars involved in that. They would probably be higher. But your point about all of those schools, and Indiana is another one I don't think you mentioned. And Tom Allen, I was watching him on TV, and, he looked like a, 10-year-old on Christmas Day talking about all the guys that he pulled in. And the rankings back it up. I know all coaches seem to like their guys on signing day, but the numbers back everything up with Allen. But what that tells me, Scar, is that Kevin Warren, the commissioner, needs to take a hard look, maybe as soon as here in 2022, and saying, let's reconfigure the East and West. The balance of the power is way too heavy. When you're talking about the Big Ten East, mix those teams up. Do it again, or do away with the divisions or something. It's not that difficult. And the way, like we were talking about before, the way college football is evolving, they're going to have a playoff expansion here coming up. You can pay the players. There's no reason that they need to sit down and have these written in stone where the Big Ten East has to be the Big Ten East. I would be in favor of mixing that up. I think most people would,
the guys that really have it rough are the Maryland, Rutgers, Indiana. There's no way it's as fair to them to rebuild their program as Brett Bielema at Illinois or Jeff Brom at Purdue. They don't play Michigan every year and Ohio State every year. Purdue and those people. That's a huge advantage for them, especially if you take Purdue and Indiana. Take those 2 schools. They're in the same state. They're going to recruit the same kids. Their program's about the same, but guess what? Indiana gets Michigan every year. Indiana gets Purdue or gets Ohio State and Penn State every year. So that's a huge disadvantage for that. And you make a good point. I don't know. You make a good point why it could and should be maybe a rotating thing. Make sure we get our rivals still though.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, whichever way, it's going to still be tough for Michigan because they're always going to want to play Ohio State and they're always going to want to play Michigan State. So,
yeah.
And those are going to be tough where, Indiana's draws, if you're talking about, they always want Purdue or whatever. I don't even know. They would always want the Purdue and Minnesota. I don't know, whatever it would be for them. All right, Scar, the Orange Bowl, what's 2 weeks from tomorrow? Is that what we're talking about here? Tomorrow?
Yeah, we're coming down.
Next week, this will be Friday. Will be Christmas Eve, and then the following Friday, New Year's Eve. So 2 weeks from tomorrow, it is the Orange Bowl. We've talked a lot about this, and low scoring game. Will Michigan be able to run the ball on Georgia? Will this Michigan offense be able to make plays in the passing game? The Michigan defense, how well will they do against that Georgia offense? We think pretty good. So the more I think about it, the more I watch it. The easiest part is to say, Michigan's not going to be able to run against Georgia, and they're going to dogs are going to make them throw, and that's why Georgia's the big favorite here. Up to I see yesterday or the day before it's 8.5. That's how they're looking at it. But Michigan's path is the same kind of path that they had against Wisconsin. Low scoring game, but being able to throw the ball and hit some plays in the passing game, I think they can get this to the fourth quarter. I feel like they can win the Orange Bowl by getting it to the fourth quarter and making plays in the fourth quarter against Georgia and then get to the championship game. Does that sound like, it's wishful thinking, or do you think that is doable?
listen, I watch these two teams. I've been looking at Georgia. I mean, who's going to make plays? It's no different than us playing Ohio State. They got our quarterback is as a better passer than their guy. They got great running backs. So do we. They got a good offensive line. So do we. They got some big, bad defensive linemen. So do we. We got to make plays. We got to coach. Bowl preparation, Denny. Which coach has a better, smarter strategy? Who did a better job in that 3.5 week period, letting their players get healthy, letting them get their strength back without getting soft? There's a fine line there. And I went through it, and you got to be smart. And I think there's a reason some guys have real good bowl records and other guys struggle. So hopefully Jim and the Michigan coaches have a great plan there in terms of prep. You got to hit, but not too much.
Well, when you say that, Scar, Harbaugh, and it's nothing but good news for Jim over the last month or so, obviously, since the Michigan State game they haven't lost. But when you say that, somebody might say, when's the last time Harbaugh won a bowl game? That was the first year. So I don't know, but he's had to deal with guys. I'm not making excuses or anything. So there's a few of those years, even both of the captains, they were wanting to go to the pros already. So they sat out the bowl games, and they've had some tough draws, but that sounds like excuse making. Do you think there's anything to bowl preparation that needs to be changed up or that they'll examine? I think that's a question for Harbaugh. I think that's a legitimate question for him. Like, hey, Jim, haven't had success in your first year against Florida. Are you going to do something different this time around, or what do you chalk that up to?
Yeah, I don't know how he prepares. I'm not a player under him. I'm not seeing it. I wish I could, but it does matter. All I know is it matters.
Yeah,
as a player, and because sometimes I thought maybe we did a little too much hitting at times back in my day. You left your best game on the practice field, but we played some. I don't want to make any excuse of it either way.
Well, my dad would always say that Bo only cares about beating Ohio State. He likes the Rose Bowl and he loves it, but he gets out and he has to play the West Coast teams, and it's sure he wants to win those, but he puts so much emphasis. Everything 99% of his emphasis is on beating Ohio State, and then and then the other teams are ready. What do you think? Like his Bow's bowl record, and it speaks for itself.
No, I tell you, one of the things that I think is and I maybe you can have somebody research this, but I remember when I was getting recruited, and they had just won the Big Ten championship, and they were going to play, and they eventually won their bowl game against Washington. Bo won his first game. But anyway, that was the first year they had the indoor building, the indoor practice building. So I bet if you looked at Michigan's record from 1981 on, I bet you it's pretty decent compared to before they had the indoor building. I think the indoor building was huge because they used to go out there 2 weeks early, and they were out there too long, and I just think anyway. I think that's a factor. To answer your question, Danny, we gave every effort we had. There's absolutely no question that we lifted and ran for a couple of weeks prior, and we practiced and hit, and we were preparing. It just didn't work out, but for a lot of reasons. But
well, I think USC, you're playing. They're sleeping in their own beds. I mean, that Michigan's going across the. I always thought that was a. Oh,
it's huge. Listen, Denny, I don't know how much time you want to talk about my experience, but my freshman year, I'm going to lay it out to you clear as day.
All right.
My freshman year, we got the #1 ranked team in the country. It didn't work out very well. We ended up going to the Bluebonnet Bowl in Houston. We played at the old Astrodome. We're playing UCLA. They got to travel 1,000 miles. We got to travel about 1,500 miles. We're playing in Houston. We kicked their butt. They got to travel. We got to travel. Neutral site. We kicked their butt. The very next year, we're Big Ten champs. We go to play in the Rose Bowl. Guess who we're playing?
USC.
UCLA.
UCLA.
Guess who plays at the Rose Bowl?
The Bruins. Home.
Guess who? Guess who sleeps on their own bed? Guess who ain't worried about Disneyland and all that other BS, chasing girls and all that other crazy stuff that I'm just going to lay it, we wanted to see the sights a little bit. Anyway, it matters. It matters. We're going 3 time zones. They're playing on their grass field that they're used to. They got a big, we had a crowd there. They had a crowd there, but those little things matter. I firmly believe, and I've said this, the Big Ten bowl records, what do you think they would have been like, Denny, if USC would have had to go play Ohio State in Chicago?
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. Well, as it applies to this college football playoff, I don't know if there's any advantage. I don't see one. I mean,
no, I don't see it either here.
It's a long drive, anyways. If you're driving from, Athens or Atlanta, I mean, that's still a hell of a drive to go down to the Orange Bowl. Of course, I don't know if you've ever made that drive from Michigan. That's a heck of a drive. I think, flying. And I've taken 75 straight down, as far as, Lauderdale. That takes you. It feels like it takes you a couple of days to do it. You can do it, but flying's the way to go there. But how about the advantage then? Maybe though for Michigan, if they do beat Georgia, the championship game is in Indianapolis, Lucas Oil. That's not that hard of a drive for Michigan fans.
Yeah, I think this game is sold out. In fact, a buddy of mine who's really connected to Michigan, he had a hard time getting tickets. So this game, this semi is really a tough ticket, and they'll be, the Michigan people will have every ticket that's available. But I just, traveling 3-4 time zones, those things matter. I'm sorry, but I think they matter.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you on that.
Danny, I have a quick story. That was, I was going to tell you this story. You talk about recruiting, and you talk about bowl games, and you talk about championships and how that matters. I remember sitting there with my family. Michigan's getting ready to kick off in the Rose Bowl. Game was maybe 4:00. They used to kick that thing off. I get a phone call around 3:45. It's the recruiting coordinator at Michigan, a guy named Fritz Seifert.
Nice guy.
And he says, Jim, I hope you're watching. We're all excited. We're getting ready to come out. We want you to be a part of Michigan. You're going to be a Wolverine, all this, blah, blah, blah. He hangs up the phone. 10 minutes later, Michigan runs on the field, and you can see we're watching the game at home. And here's the guy I just talked to is running on the field, with the rest of the Michigan football team. So that was like, wow, this guy had enough, he thought about me, calling me before this game. And, those little things matter in recruiting, man. All that stuff is big. And I never forgot that.
Sounds like that was one of the reasons you ended up going blue. All right, Scott, before we get to the memorabilia minute, I'll ask you, you showed that helmet that we could see in the screen there. That was from a bowl game, from the Fiesta Bowl. John Falk shot me a message and said, "Hey, tell Scar I want that back." And no, he didn't. But before we get to that, the Michigan recruiting spotlight, we talked a lot about recruiting today, of course, the day after National Signing Day. But so it ends up where Michigan gets 22 recruits, 23 if you count Andrew Gentry, but he's not counted in when they evaluate the class in terms of ranking this year's class. So they end up at 8. And, it was only a month ago. They were sitting there. They had fallen back. They had lost one of their in-state wide receivers, and a couple other teams had jumped in front of them. I think they fell all the way back to 21. I was like, wow, 21. Is Michigan going to be able to make it even into the top 15? But, then they just start winning, and the coaching carousel, they just flipping guys. I don't want to say left and right, but they flipped a couple, and here they are. They stay in the top 10. They get all the way up to number 8. And so it was a heck of a year. And I always look at it like, I would like the number 1 recruiting class. I remember when that happened. It's great, to win the recruiting national championship. I would like to say that, being in the top 5 every year would be a nice goal for them. That's not too far off. But I always say, like, if they're right around number 10, that's good. Developing them, keeping them, and then getting them actually out there on the field. It's a point to go back to that 2018 class. You mentioned Hassan Haskins. He was in that class. Ryan Hayes was in that class. He was a 3-star. It wasn't littered. The Schoonmaker was in that class. These players that contributed to this year's team winning the Big Ten championship. Ronnie Bell wasn't even a 3-star. He was a 2-star. It should be pointed out, they did a really nice job getting those players, developing them. And that class was ranked 24th. So if they can have that kind of impact with a number 8 class, then, away they go.
Yeah, you want to recruit great players, and also though, Denny, we're keeping our guys. I bet we had a lot more 4 and 5 year kids than Ohio State. There's a downside to those 3 and done guys. They're not at their peak in terms of development. So recruiting matters, man. You got those numbers matter. Where you're ranked, it matters. Now listen, I played with a lot of highly recruited guys that never played. I played with guys that were the last minute call. They got the call the night before signing day, because guys turned them down, and they were All-Americans, so you don't know how it's going to play out, but those numbers do matter in the long run. Mathematically, the 4 and 5 star kids are going to, they're going to pan out, but
yeah, hopefully you keep the 4 or 5 year guys. I think you're right with Ohio State, but now with the transfer portal, the amount of guys that are just hitting that thing, and you look, last year was double digits. It's expected to be double digits again this year, and we don't know. I mean, you have an idea when you start looking at the players, that didn't play, but there's always surprises that way, and they're expecting, to have double-digit turnover that way with the portal again. So, it's a good to give the players the flexibility where they can get out of there. I know a lot of former players that I talk with, they don't like it because, almost every one of them thought, I'm sick of this. I want to get out of here, but they don't, because, you don't want to make it that easy for them to transfer. They ended up sticking with it. Tom Brady is one of the classic stories that way. He went in with Lloyd Carr, slapped the transfer paper or something like on the desk and said, I'm out of here. Carr's like, I'll sign it or something. But then, he's like, I'm going to come back and beat all these son of a bitch, and, it turned out well, even at Michigan. If he never went on to the pros, it'd have been a nice example of sticking with it, with Tom Brady and everything that he had to go through. But that transfer portal's real and something they have to definitely deal with, and that's just happened over the last year. And that's not going anywhere.
No, I get it. I understand. I went through the same kind of thing as Brady. I'd said if I had a nickel for every time I wanted to leave, as a freshman, sophomore, my 3rd year, and it all turned around. And everything came from me. My 4th year, I was able to start my last 2, but there's a lot of guys that didn't get the chance to leave that maybe would have wanted to, guys I played with. But I understand that argument, man, that grind and how much it meant having gone through it.
Scar, I got a couple. I'm sorry I interrupted you. Did you complete your thought there? Sorry.
No, we're good. Just like I said, I understand both sides of that argument, and it worked out for me. I was able to start my last 2, but there's guys that maybe if they'd had a chance to transfer, maybe they would have. So I totally understand those former guys you talked to, but I bet any money they were both starters.
Well, I want to ask you because, Georgia, this was called a generational defense, one of the greatest defenses of all time. And going to that Alabama game in the SEC championship, they were giving up, I think, 7 points a game. Alabama lit them up. It's still in single digits. But when you talk about great defenses, you mentioned you started up to 85. That 85 defense, when you talk about points per game, it's one of the greatest defenses in Michigan history. I think you guys gave up less points than this Georgia team that everybody's talking about. Is this greatest generational defense of all time? What do you think, Scar? Do you know the number of how many points per game?
I don't know the number, but it was probably easier in my era because there wasn't the hurry up offense wasn't, they're running a lot more plays now. They're scoring. Their coaches got smarter in terms of spreading the field to really make it more difficult for a defense. Listen, I'm proud of what we did back in '85, but coaches offensively have gotten smarter to really maximize the width of the field, opposed to when they're running the quarterback. They're using every inch of the width. It's really tough to keep people down now. I mean, it was tough back in our day too, but anyway, Denny, this Georgia game, let's stop the run. That's the big thing. We got to focus on that. Secure the football, and we can slow their run game down. I have total confidence in that.
All right, give me a thought. This past week, you were in New Jersey for the Army-Navy game. What was that experience like?
Oh, Danny, that was I've been trying for 10 years to get a ticket to that game, and it was just beautiful, man. It's a patriotic scene. You know, you love the military, and you got the jets that fly by, you know, before kickoff, and then here come the helicopters right after the jets, and it's just a beautiful crowd of just patriotic Americans, and they're not you watch the game, they are not the biggest dudes at all. The football players are not, it's not like watching Michigan and Ohio State, but they play hard, they're smart, they're tough. It was a great game, and you can just feel how hard they play for it. You see the Army, the Navy students there, they all have to go to that game. They bust them all in. And you just love being an American, man. You know, you just feel, and you just want to really thank our soldiers, man. You watch that game, but it was a beautiful experience. You need to go. Put it on your bucket list.
And you know what? You saw a good game. You know, they came out, there were fireworks right off the bat. You know, Navy was a big-time underdog. They ended up winning the game. I love the uniforms in that one. I love the defensive tackle for Army right there in the middle. That guy was awesome. And, Navy's game plan was really good. And, it wasn't decided right to the final minutes there, you know?
Well, that was an example of two teams that do the exact same thing. But the Navy coach said, I can't beat you with my normal stuff. I'm going to run something different. And that's really how he was able to win the football game. He said, Army's better at doing what we both do. And so he changed it up. He went to some one-back stuff he hardly ever runs. And he was able to move the football better he had the fake punt. I love those two coaches, man. I just love watching them coach. I love hearing them talk. I love everything they stand for. I study what they do. I've defended those kind of offenses as a high school coach. So I really appreciate it. I get it, how tough it is to defend. And I love watching that kind of football.
Awesome. All right, we wind it up with a minute of something with memorabilia. Now, I can go to my deck of cards, unless you've got something there, Scar, in the room that you want to show us. That you got.
I'm not normally a self-promoting.
Here we go.
I am not normally a self-promoting guy. Okay, we're all team guys. Michigan guys are team guys. But right. I do have we had a thing when I played, they called it the Victors Club. And every week you had to play a certain amount of snaps. So normally it was just the starters, and you had to grade out at, I think it was 80%. You had to have a grade that was 80% or better. And then you got to wear a Victors Club shirt Monday in practice. You wore the thing all week. And it was kind of it was a nice honor to have. That, you were recognized, you played a certain amount of snaps, you graded out at a certain level, and it was a good thing to have. It was a goal for a lot of guys, and it was a goal for me when I did become a starter to be on at the end of the year. If your Victors Club, we had 11 games. I think it was 8 games out of 11 you had to grade, and then you would get a trophy at the end of the year. And they put your name in the which is now Schembeckler Hall, and you were Victors Club for the whole year. This is the trophy, Victors Club. I was able to make it 84 and 85, and it was something I was proud of. But it's I think Jim is still doing it. I do believe I've seen the names over there at the in the Schembeckler Hall. Victors Club, got to grade a certain amount, play a certain snaps. If you make probably 8, 9 out of 12 games this year, you're on that thing, and it's something that a lot of guys strive for.
I like the hardware. Is that different? Like Vastardis was named, was it champion of the week? Is that the same thing that you're talking about? Because I was talking with somebody, said he didn't think that there was a player named that many times in 30, 40 years that Vastardis was named, I don't know, a champion of the week or had some kind of recognition.
Yeah, Denny, when I played, we had offense, defense, special team, player of the week, champion was one of the awards that would have gone to and maybe Hustler. I think we had Hustler. So
All right.
Champion was many times was like a walk-on type guy who just really played real well in practice to prepare the team. You know, he might not have even played in the game. You know what I mean? It was just a guy. It was a guy who was a team guy who was like, like our Rudy. Everybody's got Rudies every week in practice. And so Hustler would have been like a guy who was maybe not had a great game, but wasn't as good as the guy that they gave the offensive player of the week or the defensive player of the week. In fact, I think that's what we had. I think we had offense player of the week, and then offensive hustler, defensive player, and then defensive hustler, and then champion, and then special teams. I think there were 6 awards back in my day.
They give you that at the banquet, or they give you
No,
that?
you got it every week in practice. Every week on Monday, or maybe I think it was Sunday or Monday. I forget. Bo would have the 6 awards, and he would mention them at that the next day, or it was Monday. I can't remember.
You get a sticker for that too to put on the helmet?
Yeah, you probably got a sticker, but you would have got a plaque or something. You know, defensive player, hustler, champion. And the champion was, it's funny, I did the same thing as a coach. I just copied everything Michigan did. When I became a coach, I had the same stuff for my players, you know. And it all works. It motivates. You got to have a way to motivate the kids that don't play too, you know.
Yeah, well, that all sounds good. Let me see. I didn't go through any of the feedback here. I'm going to look at some of it here. Will Bond, boot camp every day. I'm just looking. Ann Arbor, let's see. A lot of different things here. Let me read it through. I think they should only schedule 5 regular season conference games. And then instead of having blowouts, the next games could be challenges. Wouldn't you like to see the good SEC Big Ten challenge game about 6 weeks in? I hate watching the blowouts. Anyways, they should have 16 teams in the national championship too, talking about the playoffs. Some good points there. Will, sorry I wasn't clicking over and looking at that in real time as we were going through. We'll talk about all that alignment and everything else and keep going through. Scar, you get a special recognition for staying on for as long as you have today. I appreciate all of your insight and your comments and everything here on this Thursday afternoon live. Thanks. You have any final thought?
Go Blue!
All right. Thanks, Scar. Talk to you